Now by the University of Johannesburg's Professor Hartmut Winkler. Prof, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Look, not the first time that we would have gotten a bit of optimism from Eskom about what to anticipate around load shedding, at least over sort of a more medium-term projection. What do you make of what the power utility is saying about its current state?
Yes, I think first of all, it's very good that they make these kind of announcements, and they've given quite a bit of detail about where their problems are and what they need to achieve, and a couple of the initiatives that they hope on in introducing. So that's a positive. But you are right, they are focusing on essentially on the best case scenario, especially what they mentioned about this maximum of stage 4 load shedding throughout the summer months. That is their best case scenario. Things could go wrong. For example, this time last year, we didn't know that Kusile was going to experience a major disaster, which would see 3 of its units out of action, and they haven't been repaired yet. So a lot of what they're hoping to do hinges on what happens at Kusile. They are repairing it, but it's essentially a patch job. So they're just trying to get the thing operational again, but at the same time, this is not really what one should be. One should really be looking for more long-term solutions. But yes, so they're hoping that they say December. I think maybe earlier in the new year is more likely that they're going to have the whole of Kusile up and running. Now that would make a difference. That would be an extra, or would be 3 stages of load shedding that would be better than what we are now. But by and large, I think they are trying to be honest. Of course, they can't really tell us the worst case scenario. Both the public and the government doesn't want to hear that. We just want to hear the good news at this point. But let's bear in mind, as much as their plan is good and it looks like it could work out that way, if things do go wrong anywhere, it's going to be worse than what they're planning right now.
Look, Prof, I suppose at this moment, right, we all know what's at stake, not only for Eskom, but also for the government. You know, we're going into, yes, summer months, but the next couple of months are going to be critical because they also happen to be what would be a build-up to what is the 2024 national elections. And there is obviously, some of that plays into how important it would be to try and get things right and to try and get things working as much as possible. But I'm keen to hear what, according to you, the worst case scenario might be.
I think the worst case scenario is that that next year is going to be a year like this year, especially like in the first half, like we had in the first half of the year. Eskom actually needs to be congratulated, not so much on turning things around because they haven't quite gotten there yet, but just on the fact that they've managed to stabilize the situation. So in other words, it looks like we are more or less at the bottom now. If they continue on the current path, then we can see a slow recovery, but it certainly won't be happening before the next elections. So President Ramaphosa, the electricity minister, have got a few hard months ahead trying to convince the public that things are getting better, when in fact everybody will see that load shedding is going to continue. Eskom itself, they didn't talk about that now, but their outlook for the next year is that they expect some load shedding every week, which is more actually what they were predicting for this year, and indeed that's what's happened. So, yes, it's not nice for the government to be in this situation, but there's very little that anyone can do right now. We're talking about making major repairs, which simply don't take overnight. And I think it would not be a good idea to try and pretend that there aren't any problems. I think it would be much better to admit that we have got a crisis situation and that it looks like there's some positive news which will see us getting out of that crisis, but it won't be immediate. It's going to take several years until we get out of this.
I want to draw into this conversation the role of the government and business working committees, right? These groupings that have been formed to tackle the big problems facing the state. They include energy, they include transport in the form of Transnet and crime. Those are some of the big ticket matters that are being dealt with. Focusing on Eskom, Prof, has there been any real progress, at least as far as you can see, that has come out of that partnership with the private sector? Are we seeing the fruit of that yet?
Indirectly, yes. What has happened is that I think all major organizations, be that companies, be that even residential estates and so on, are now actively making plans of how to mitigate against the power crisis. That usually means that they're installing some sort of capacity to produce their own energy, usually by installing solar panels, or to just store energy over the critical periods. In other words, having batteries ready, which will see them over the evening peaks. What the government has managed to do is to make it a lot easier for these sort of installations to happen. And I think one of the reasons why we haven't reached stage 8 load shedding this year, which is what many people, including myself, had expected, is precisely because this growth in private installations has actually been quite rapid this year. And so on that level, I think it's helping quite a bit. There's, again, very little that the private sector can actually do. For example, there's lots of talk that, expertise can be channeled into Eskom and so on. But Eskom is not the sort of organization where you can just bring in some top coach overnight and change everything around. It's a bit like with a soccer team. If you want to build a successful soccer team, you need many years for it. It doesn't matter what coach you bring in overnight. They're not going to have an immediate impact.
And I think that's also where sort of a lot of interest is around the transparency over how exactly what is spoken about and being planned, how that translates into, the functioning of what is a state institution that has its own legislation, legal framework that it has to abide by, but still take on whatever technical expertise that may come through from the private sector. So I guess, Prof, effectively what I'm asking is there actually anything meaningful beyond the fact that when the plans are being spoken about, it sounds very progressive. Clearly, all the partners mean very well, but practically, how does that then manifest itself?
Yes, I think ultimately the resolving of the power crisis is largely within Eskom's hands itself. That is, as much as people have seen that Eskom has not been very good at doing some things, they are still the best at managing their own power stations and their own grid. They've just had now years and years of experience in it, and there's still people there who have worked with this equipment for a very long time. So ultimately, as much as I think what one can just do is to, I think where we need to make progress is in the planning aspect. There again, Minister Mantashe promised us the release of a draft electricity plan at the end of this month. Okay, he's got a couple of days left, but that's a plan that's long overdue. And once that plan does come out, it needs to be debated thoroughly. And we just need to have something that one can work from. That's, I think, is also what is really needed. As much as we're in a difficult situation that's going to take a long time to get out, we need sort of clear guidelines on where to move, and we need some sort of broad consensus on that. It looks like what Eskom has presented today, they're thinking along the same lines as well. There's some very nice initiatives they have there, including the introduction of smart meters, and also other schemes where they enable the private sector to sell electricity they don't need back to the grid and so on. So there's initiatives like that in there, which already are operating in other countries, which are no doubt going to come to us here at some point anyway. But that's what one really needs to be looking at. There's some sort of holistic scheme, some sort of holistic planning, and that's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for now. Professor Hartmut Winkler is with the University of Johannesburg.